we are going to make a site that looks like this. I'm going to pretend like it's the Goose Lake Nature Center. And we're going to create navigation. We're going to put this, we're going to assemble this using absolutely positioned divs. We're going to use some techniques that you will use later on when you learn responsive design. So this is going to be new. Alright, the first thing we probably need are the graphics. But let's create our site first. So we're going to go to Dreamweaver here, and we're going to create a new site. Site, new site, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, Goosey. That's right, Goosey. I guess that's good. All right, and then I'm going to create a folder on my desktop. Go to new folder. I'm going to call it Goosey, like that. Goosey. I don't know if that's how you spell. Don't matter. Okay, so now here I'm in my Goosey. So I'm going to hit choose, and so my site name is Goosey. That's for my eyes, so I could do whatever I want. I could put lake or whatever, but it's important that I have chosen my root folder. So I'm going to hit save, and if I do that, I can see that in the Dreamweaver brain or in the site management, I can see my files. Now there's this vertical line. You can move this back and forth so you can see everything that's going on. Alright, so let's begin. Let's create our, well, let's go and do our graphics. Okay, so here's a graphic that you can download. I'm sure you know where. So what we're going to do is create our different graphics. I'm going to turn off all those things, and I don't know. I'll probably just go down to the beginning of the water over here and go image crop, and that's going to be my background. It's going to be this background here, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to do file, of course, save for the web, and I'm going to make it a JPEG and save. Then I'm going to go to my desktop, go to Goosey, and I'm going to save it as, I don't know, pond JPEG. Make sure you have the JPEG there. Sometimes Macs don't put the extension, and it's going to be in my Goosey folder. So I'm going to hit save. Now if I go to my Dreamweaver and I hit refresh, you'll see that there it is. Right there in my brain is a pond. Okay, well, that's weird. Alright, so now I have to get my other parts. So I'm going to get rid of marching ants, Command D, make sure I'm on the nest. I'm going to put my marching ants around the nest. I'm going to do Command C, Command N, return, Command V. So that segregates just the nest. I'm going to turn off the background because I don't want to see the white rectangle on my website. So I'm turning on basically the transparency. Alright, file, save for the web. I'm going to make sure it's a JPEG or else you get that white. Make sure it's a PNG or else you get the white background. By picking PNG, you get the invisible background. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to call this nest PNG. It's always a good idea to name things semantically so when you start creating your page you don't have to wonder what. And because I saved it, I can get rid of this. Don't save. Okay, now I'm going to go to my mama layer, which is the mama duck. Make sure I'm on the layer here. Make sure it's highlighted. I'm going to put my marching ants around the mama duck. Do Command C, Command N, opens a new page, return, and Command V. I'm going to turn off the back so I have that transparency. File, save for the web. PNG, I see the squares, which means I have that transparency that I want. Then I'm going to call this Mama PNG. So I already have the Mama, so I'm just going to not save. Get rid of the marching ants. I'm going to go to the little babies. Make sure I'm highlighted on goslings. Command C, Command N, return, Command V. Turn off the background so I get that transparency. File, save for the web. Boop, good. I'll call these babies. And there they are. The last thing I have to, I can close this and don't save. And then I need the logo. This is what they want us to put on their web, so fine. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to put the marching. Oh, make sure I'm on the Goose Loose Nature Center, whatever. Oh, that's what it's called. Okay, and then I'm going to put my marching ants. Command C, Command N, return, Command V, and I'm going to turn off the back. I know you're thinking that it didn't get the bottom part, but it really is there. Okay, so I'm going to save this file, save for the web, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, logo PNG. Logo PNG. So there. Now I have all the graphics that I need for my beautiful, beautiful site. And let's see, if I hit refresh, I get to see all of those files, making sure that the extension on is okay. Let's begin. Let's create a new page. HTML is cool. And you can call this whatever you want, but you got to save it in your root folder. I'm going to save this as T working. When I create templates, I always put a T that lets me know that it's a template rather than a web page. Okay, making sure it's in my root folder, which it is. There it is. And probably the first thing I'm going to do is put, I don't know, Goose Lake Center. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, now the first thing I want to do is do a div. A wrapper div. We're going to say wrapper instead of container because when it comes to responsive design and accelerated mobile pages, it works better than container. A lot of times people will call other things containers. So I'm going to go to Insert, Div. I'm going to do wrapper, lowercase. Did I create a new rule for that? Nope. So I'm going to do a new CSS rule. And then I'm going to go down here and do new style sheet. So I'm going to create a wrapper rule in a new style sheet. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to ask me what do I want to call that style sheet. So I'm going to call it styles. Because I guess that's what's expected. And making sure it's in my Goosey, everything has to be in the root folder. Okay. And then my wrapper is going to be 960. And we won't put a height on it because we want that to grow and shrink according to the content. Then I am going to put a right margin auto, left margin auto. That will make things centered. And all I have to do is hit OK, it writes the CSS. Second time it writes the HTML. Now if I was to save this, make sure I save all because there are two files that need to be saved, the T working and the styles. So I'm going to save all. And I'm going to look at it in the browser. Whoa, there it is. Woo-hoo. All right. So we're doing really good, don't you think? All right. Now we're going to do something that will come in handy when you learn responsive. We're going to go to Lucifer. And if you look on, I don't know, where is it? CSS classes. Let's see. Secure. Did you see it? Oh, responsive classes, number 19 at the making of this. You could right click on it and you could do save link as, and you could put it wherever you want. Or you can just click on that, responsive classes, and look what you get. You get this. This is going to create the thing, the styles that will make your site responsive. You can name the class, and if I put Goose, yeah, let's put Goose. And you'll see that there are some classes, Goose 1, Goose 2, Goose 3, and Goose 4. We're going to explain all these percentages. It looks so complicated. And so I'm going to copy this, select it and copy it, and I'm going to put it inside my styles because it's a style sheet. Make sure there's no opening and closing styles because it's going to be right there in the sheet. And there you go. So right under there. And you have such things as align right. That'll be a class where we can move graphics to the right and then to the left with a margin of 5. And these I'm going to explain a little bit later. Or maybe not. But here's my wrapper. And I'm going to save all. And then the second thing I'm going to do on that particular tool is grab the helper. This helper will be removed after design purposes, but it's going to come in real handy. And you're thinking we're going to put this in the style sheet, but we're not. We're going to put this at the bottom of our working HTML. Right at the bottom, you could put it right after the HTML. I'm going to put a bunch of spaces so I can see when it comes time to removing it after the design process. I know exactly where to look for it. So there it is. It's right underneath the HTML. Now what that did, let me save all. Save all. And then if we go to the site, you'll see that it basically did two things. That code at the bottom of the page gave you these 12 columns so that you'll be able to see your layout as they happen. Second, it tells you how wide your screen is. When we do responsive design, that's going to come in real handy. Looky, right now my screen is 1203, but if I shrink it down, now it's 801, and when you shrink it down some more, okay, this would be the iPad, and this of course would be a phone. Okay, so it tells you the device width, and that's why when you're designing it you'll need that. It'll come in handy, but after the design process you don't want that at the bottom of your page. Okay, so here's a wrapper. Let's do our next one. Now watch closely. This is very important. Where it says content for ID wrapper goes here, put that way down so it doesn't goof you up, because if everything that we do is going to be between the closing div and the opening wrapper. So I'm going to go on the next line and I'm going to go insert a div just like you know how to do. But here's the thing that's different. We know that our site is going to have 12 columns. Okay, and we also know that in our style sheet we have 12 columns. Now this is going to be clear to you in class, so this is just a reminder. But look, one column is 8.333. That's 1/12. So if we wanted a div to go across just one column, that would be 1/12 or 8.333%. If we wanted to go across two columns, well, that's 2/12 or 16.666. If we wanted to go across 3, well, 3 out of 12 is 1/4. So look, when you have a 3-column div, it's 25%. Then it goes all the way up to 12 columns is 100%. What do you think 6 columns would be? 6 out of 12 is 50%. Okay, now watch why this is important. Okay, I'm going to go back here to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to insert my nav. So I'm going to go div, and instead of ignoring this class, look, because we have those classes inside the style sheet, look, here they are. They show up in this drop down. So if we want the nav to go all the way across, we're going to have Goose 12, because that says go across 12 columns. And we will call it nav. Okay, and we never did a rule for this yet, so we're going to do a new CSS rule and make sure it's in the style CSS, and when I hit OK, it writes the CSS, and look, I don't have to do anything here. You would think that we'd have to put at least the width in, but we don't, because the class Goose 12 is going to make it 100%. And our nav bar is going to be pushed down by our button, so we don't need a height. So guess what? We don't have to do anything there. So the first time it writes the CSS, second time it writes the HTML. So now we have our wrapper div, and inside the wrapper we have a ID called nav, and look, there's a class 12, which refers to the style sheet that says Goose 12 is 100%. So we know just by looking at it that this column is going to be 12. Hey, Chris. So we know that this div or nav is going to go all the way across 100% or 12 columns. If we were to save all, because we updated both files, and we take a look, see now, look, there's content for class Goose 12 goes here. Okay, so now that was easy, so let's do another div for the header. Class. If we want the header to go all the way across, well, then we pick Goose 12 again, because Goose 12 is 100%, or Goose 12 is 12 columns. Then we'll call it header.
Mike Shiner, please call 8957.
Hey, Mike. We haven't done a new CSS rule, so let's do that. Make sure it's in the style CSS. Hit OK, and guess what? Because our graphic is going to push that div down, we don't have to put a height. And because we have a class Goose 12, we don't have to put a width. And so we just hit OK. Isn't this easier? First time it writes the CSS. Second time it writes the HTML. We have to save both because here's the working and the style. So let's save all. Let's look at our beautiful website. So now you have your two divs. They go all the way across. Okay, now let's do our section and our right bar. This is the only thing might be a little bit different. So I'm going to hit my div. Now, if we want our div to go across 8 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we don't even have to measure because we know it's going to be 8 columns. So we are going to pick Goose 8. Okay, and this will be, we can call this article. Article. And then we're going to create a new CSS rule. Make sure it's in the styles. Okay. And this time we don't have to worry about the width because Goose 8 is going to be 8 columns. We don't want to put a height on because we don't know how much content is going to go in that div. But we do have to put a float left. And that's it. So we hit OK. First time writes the CSS. Second time, look, it writes the HTML. If we were to save all and look at our site, it doesn't look much different. Okay, there's a reason why this jumped up, and that's because of the float, but we'll take care of that. All right, so now look, you can tell exactly just by looking at this code how wide these columns are going to be. So this div goes all the way across. This goes across 8 columns. So let's do our right bar. I'm going to insert the div. Now, if there's 12 columns and we already used 8, it means that we subtract 8 from 12, which gives us 4. Okay, we're going to call this right bar. No spaces or special characters, you guys. New CSS rule, style CSS. You can hit OK. And the only thing we have to do is the box float left, because we already have the width established with the Goose 4. It's going to go across 4 columns. We don't want to put a height because we don't know how much content we're going to put there. Okay, so that's all we need to do is put the float. And I'm going to hit OK, writes the CSS. Second time it writes the HTML. Let's just put our footer in because that's where we're going to do the clear both. So div, it's going to go all the way across, all 12 columns. So we're going to pick Goose 12, call it footer, new CSS rule, and CSS, style CSS. And because it is at the end of a bunch of floats, we have got to go to box and clear both. There. Okay, and that's all. We don't have to worry about the width because that's going to be taken care of in the class Goose 12. We might want to put a height in it. Yeah, what the heck. Let's put a height in it. And let's put a background. I don't know what would go good with our beautiful swamp picture. Anything goes good with a swamp picture. Alright, so I'm going to make it green. I might go to type, and since it's green, I might make the font, I don't know, white. I'll make the font white. So it'll be a whitish font on a background of green. The next thing I might want to do is go to block maybe and align it to the center. Okay, isn't that a weird place to put it? Block, center? It don't matter. We got to do what it makes us do. So I'm going to hit OK. There's my footer. Do we have all our CSS? Yes, there's our footer with the background color and the off-white, clear both. So if we were to save all, because both of our files, tworking and style CSS, was updated, now I'm going to go and look at our beautiful site. And there it is so far. Now, it's kind of hard to see. Oh, let me just tell you another thing. You'll notice that in your style sheet, there is a class, and it's called nested. Where's the nested? Here it is. And look, what it does is it has a margin of 10 pixels. So wherever we put a div called nested, it's going to have 10 pixels around it. Now, in responsive design, padding does not work so good. So, but margin does. So watch. If we go to, let me save all before I forget. If we look at this, we can see that our text goes right up against the edge. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had 10 pixels separating those? Okay, look, watch closely how I do this, because this is really cool. I'm going to highlight, let me separate these so you can see exactly what's going on here. I'm going to highlight content for Goose 8 ID article goes here. And look, I'm going to insert a div, and looky, now it says wraparound. Before it used to say at the insertion point, but we're talking about the code that we're about to write is going to wrap around whatever you have highlighted. And guess what we're going to put? We're going to put nested, because that's going to put that 10 pixel gutter. Okay, and I don't even have to put an ID, and I don't even need a new rule, because that new rule, nested is already a rule. And that's why we were able to pick it, because we don't need it. Okay, so the first time, look, I'm going to hit it, and look closely what happened. If you look real close, you'll see that there is a div with the ID article. But inside that div is another div, a nested div called nested. Now if I save this, look, I'm going to save all, and I'm going to go back to my site, and look what happens. If you look really closely, there's this gray line that goes around, and you can see that there's a padding here. Now let's do the same thing for here, because look, that's against the line as well. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to highlight right bar. The content for right bar goes here. I'm going to insert that div. I'm going to pick nested to give that 10 pixel. I don't need to create the new rule because it's already there. I'm going to hit OK. If I save all and take a look, you'll see that it's creating that padding. If you can't see it, I'll just go to the bottom here where we have this code. And right now it is this light gray. I'm just going to make it F00 so you can see it a little bit better. That's what this code at the bottom of your page for design purposes is doing. It's letting you see where your divs are showing up. And so you can see that because of the div that was nested, it creates that padding. Should we do it for the bottom here? All right, let's do it for the bottom. Let's do it for the footer. So I'm going to go to my footer div. Here it is. Content for footer goes here. I am going to do a div. I'm going to pick that class, nested, boop, and I will hit OK, because I don't need an ID and I don't need to create the rule because it's already there. If I save all, you can see that my beautiful footer also now has the padding, at least on the sides. And that's basically how you start the grid structure using the tools. Now, just before we quit, let me just show you. You can, if you have your window snippets open, look what you can do. Okay, you can create your own snippet library. So I'm going to create a new snippet. I'm going to call it after my client, or new folder. I'm going to call it Goose Lake Center. Now watch this. Now that I have that, I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go back here and highlight this entire snippet that we pasted all the way down here. And I'm going to click the new snippet. Boom. And I'm going to call it, I don't know, responsive classes. Now that I have the snippet, look what I can do. If I was to open up a new folder, okay, I mean a new file, and I put, well, I'll just show you. I'm going to just delete everything. And when I double click the responsive classes, it pastes those in there. So everything that you do that might be really complicated, that you never ever want to do again, you can put it in your snippets collection, so that the next time you don't have to go to Musifer or wherever you got this code from. Okay, when we get back, I'm going to show you how to do the nav bar, and I'm going to show you how to add pictures and more.